peaceful surroundings. At first glance, it looks ordinary, even elegant, with its deep red bricks, its graceful windows, and the kind of front steps that invite admiration. But once the sun sets, locals say the air around the property changes. A strange chill creeps in, lights flicker behind drawn curtains, and the faint echo of footsteps begins to move through empty rooms. This is the House of Death, a home that has seen more sorrow, more fear, and more mystery than most places in all of New York. Its history begins in the late 19th century. For more than 100 years, this townhouse has been home to many different people, writers, artists, families, and dreamers, all of whom hoped to find comfort within its walls. Instead, many found something else. Misfortune seemed to follow every owner who stepped through its doors. Death came too often, accidents too strange, and stories of shadows and whispers too many to ignore. One of the most famous names connected to the house is Mark Twain. In the year 1900, Twain rented the home for a short time while living in New York. He was drawn to its beauty and charm, but even he spoke of unsettling experiences during his stay. Twain told friends that strange events happened at night. He saw glowing lights float across rooms. He felt cold bursts of air from nowhere. He even once saw a piece of wood move by itself across the floor. Twain, being a man of reason, tried to explain it away, but something in that house lingered in his thoughts long after he left. To this day, people who visit claim to see a man in a white suit wandering near the staircase, his figure faint and glowing in the dark, said to be the ghost of Twain himself, still pacing the halls of the home he could never quite forget. After Twain, the house became the property of several other residents. Families moved in and out, each one leaving sooner than planned. Neighbors began to talk about screams in the night, doors slamming on their own, and figures watching from the windows when the rooms were supposed to be empty. A woman in a long dark dress was often seen staring down from the second-floor window, her face pale, her hands pressed against the glass. Those who saw her said she vanished the moment anyone looked twice. Through the years, the stories only grew darker. The house developed a reputation for misfortune. Tenants who moved in reported bad luck, sudden illness, or terrible arguments that ended with people leaving in tears. Some claimed to feel a strange pressure when they slept, as if invisible hands were resting on their chest. Others said they woke to the sound of a child crying from another room, even when no children lived in the building. But the most tragic event connected to the House of Death came in the 1980s. By then, the EE building had been divided into small apartments. One of them was rented by a woman and her young daughter. Neighbors remembered them as kind, quiet, and loving. Then one night, the neighborhood was shaken by an unthinkable act. The woman's boyfriend, a lawyer named Joel Steinberg, was arrested for the death of the little girl. The crime shocked New York City and made headlines across the country. It was a moment of horror that left a permanent scar on the house. From that night onward, many said the energy inside became unbearable, as if the walls themselves absorbed the grief and would never release it. Investigators and paranormal researchers have visited the house for decades since that tragedy. Many describe feeling an immediate heaviness when entering, a sadness that presses deep into the chest. Cold air moves through the hallways without reason. Photographs show faint white shapes, orbs of light, and at times, the outline of human faces. Electronic devices stop working, and cameras lose power the moment they cross the front door. Some visitors say they hear footsteps on the stairs, slow and heavy, stopping right behind them. But when they turn around, the stairs are empty. Psychics who have explored the house claim that more than 20 spirits linger within. Some appear lost and quiet, wandering through rooms as if trapped between worlds. Others seem angry, shouting in whispers that echo through the walls. Among them is said to be the ghost of a young girl who appears in the hallway, wearing a small white dress, her eyes wide and empty, her voice no louder than a breath. There are also reports of a man in an old-fashioned suit seen near the fireplace, holding a book and murmuring softly to himself. Many people believe the house holds both light and darkness, some spirits peaceful, others filled with rage. Visitors often describe a strange pull, as though the house is alive and aware of their presence. A few even say they felt invisible fingers brush their hair or touch their shoulder gently, as if something wanted to be noticed. Even today, the House of Death stands quietly at 14 West 10th Street, its windows reflecting the city lights. People walk by it every day, unaware of what waits beyond its doors. But those who know the stories avoid looking too long. They say that at night, the faint figure of Mark Twain can be seen in the window, still watching the street below. They say the woman in the long dress still waits at the top of the stairs, her pale face turned toward the door. And they say that if you stand too close, you can hear faint whispers calling your name from inside. The house has seen too much sorrow, too much blood, and too many restless souls. Its beauty hides its truth, and its silence hides the cries of the dead. The House of Death is not just haunted by ghosts. It is haunted by the weight of every tragedy that ever happened within its walls. And no matter how many times it changes hands, the spirits inside never seem to let go. Number 8. Sweetwater Mansion, Florence, Alabama. In the quiet countryside of Florence, Alabama, surrounded by tall oaks and rolling hills, stands an elegant white-columned mansion that once symbolized wealth, pride, and power. But beneath its beauty lies a story woven with sorrow, betrayal, and the restless spirits of the past. The Sweetwater Mansion, built long before the Civil War, is one of the most haunted homes in the American South, a place where time seems to have stopped, and where the echoes of lost souls still move through the halls. Construction of the mansion began in the early 1800s on land granted to the Patton family, one of the most influential families in Alabama. The house was designed by General John Brahan and completed by his son-in-law, Robert Patton, who would later become governor of the state. Its grand white pillars, marble fireplaces, and sweeping staircases reflected the luxury of the plantation era. Yet even from its earliest days, tragedy and darkness followed the family. The Pattons lived lives of privilege, surrounded by wealth, land, and slaves who worked the fields. But the Civil War changed everything. When the war reached Alabama, the mansion became a shelter for wounded soldiers. Blood stained the once beautiful floors. The sound of pain filled the halls that had once echoed with laughter. As the war dragged on, the family suffered terrible losses. Sons never returned from battle, and loved ones were buried beneath the ancient trees that still surround the property today. Locals say that the spirits of those who died in Sweetwater never left. Visitors report cold drafts that pass suddenly through rooms with no open windows. Doors creak open on their own. Faint footsteps can be heard moving down the long hallway at night. And sometimes, a figure dressed in Confederate uniform appears near the staircase, standing tall and silent before fading into the shadows. But the most chilling story connected to Sweetwater Mansion is the tale of a hidden room discovered by accident many years after the war. It is said that workers repairing the house stumbled upon a small sealed chamber behind one of the walls in the basement. Inside was a coffin, and in it lay the preserved remains of a young man in full Confederate dress. No one knows how long he had been there or why his body was hidden instead of buried properly. Some believe he was the son of the family, brought home from war in secret to spare the household more grief. Others think he died under mysterious circumstances that the family tried to keep hidden. After that discovery, strange things began to happen more frequently. Lights flickered even though the wiring was new. Tools went missing and reappeared in other rooms. Workers heard whispers calling their names, followed by the sound of slow breathing in the dark. Some claimed to see the shadow of a man standing beside the coffin, as if still guarding it after death. The air around that room became so cold that no one wanted to enter again. Throughout the years, countless guests and paranormal investigators have visited Sweetwater Mansion, hoping to uncover its secrets. Many have left with stories that cannot be explained. Some reported seeing a woman in white walking across the balcony, her face pale and distant, her gown glowing softly in the moonlight. Others say she appears inside the house, standing by a window, as if waiting for someone to return. Her identity remains a mystery, though some believe she is one of the Patton daughters who died waiting for her husband to come home from the war. One investigator described hearing faint music late at night, like an old piano playing a slow and mournful tune. When he followed the sound, it led him to the parlor, but the piano was covered in dust and untouched for years. Another visitor, a caretaker who lived on the property for a time, said she often heard the sound of footsteps climbing the stairs, followed by a man's voice calling out the name, Robert. When she answered, no one was there. It is also said that a dark figure sometimes appears near the front door, wearing what looks like a soldier's coat, his face half hidden in shadow. He stands silently, watching, as if waiting for someone he once loved. Then, as quickly as he appears, he is gone, leaving only the faint scent of gunpowder and smoke. The energy inside Sweetwater Mansion is heavy, almost alive. Visitors describe an unshakable feeling of being watched, especially near the basement and the old bedrooms upstairs. Photographs taken inside often show orbs of light, misty shapes, or faces that do not belong to anyone in the room. In one famous picture, a woman's reflection appeared in a mirror during a tour, though no one stood near it at the time. Some psychics who have visited claim there are at least 7 spirits still residing within the mansion. They say not all of them are peaceful. One spirit, described as cold and angry, is said to guard the house against strangers. People who mock or challenge the supernatural, they often experience accidents, sudden illness, fainting, or a deep sadness that follows them for days. Others say the spirits simply want to be remembered, to have their stories told after so many years of silence. The mansion's beauty makes it hard to believe what it hides. Sunlight streaming through its tall windows gives it a golden glow during the day, but at night, the shadows grow thick and long. The air becomes still, and the whispers begin again. Some nights, people standing outside on the lawn claim to see candlelight flickering through the windows, though the house is empty and locked. Sweetwater Mansion is more than a relic of Southern history. It is a monument to love, loss, and unfinished stories. Every creak of its wooden floorboards, every whisper that drifts through its corridors, seems to remind visitors that the past never truly dies here. Even now, those who live nearby refuse to go near the mansion after dark. They say the spirits of Sweetwater still wander, bound to the land that once gave them both life and death. They move through the rooms where they laughed, cried, and suffered, their presence felt in the cold air and the silence that follows every step. Sweetwater Mansion stands as a haunting reminder that beauty can hide tragedy and that the dead do not always sleep. Beneath its grand pillars and fading paint, history breathes, and the spirits of a lost time still wait, forever bound to the house that will never let them go. Number 9. The Grove, Jefferson, Texas. In the small, quiet town of Jefferson, Texas, there stands a house that looks warm and welcoming at first glance. It is a charming old building with white walls, green shutters, and a wide porch that stretches along the front, surrounded by tall trees and the gentle hum of cicadas. To any passing visitor, it seems like a peaceful piece of Southern history. But those who know its past speak of something far darker. The Grove is a place where laughter turns to whispers, where time folds upon itself, and where unseen eyes seem to follow every step you take. Built in the mid-19th century, the Grove is one of the oldest homes in Jefferson. Its story begins in the 1860s, during a time when Jefferson was a booming riverport town. The house was beautiful even then, designed with high ceilings, wide windows, and elegant woodwork that reflected the prosperity of its owners. Yet behind that beauty, tragedy seemed to follow every family that ever lived there. The first owner was a merchant who built the home for his wife and children. But soon after they moved in, the family began to experience strange events. Servants whispered of ghostly figures moving through the garden at night. The children claimed to see a woman dressed in white, watching them from the corner of their bedroom. Then, one morning, the merchant's wife was found lifeless at the bottom of the stairs. The cause of death was never fully explained. After that, the house changed hands many times. Each new resident seemed to suffer misfortune. Some fell ill and never recovered. Others left abruptly, refusing to speak of what they had seen or heard. The townspeople began to call it a cursed place, though no one could say exactly why. Years later, the Grove was converted into a restaurant. For a while, it seemed as if the haunting might have quieted. Guests came to dine, unaware of the spirits that lingered around them. But before long, employees and visitors began to experience the same strange phenomena that had terrified families before them. Silverware moved by itself. Glasses fell from shelves with no one nearby. Doors opened and closed as though guided by invisible hands. One waitress recalled carrying a tray of dishes when she felt someone brush past her shoulder. Thinking it was a customer, she turned, but the room was empty. Another worker said she saw the reflection of a man standing behind her in a mirror. When she spun around, there was no one there. The man in the mirror, she said, wore old-fashioned clothes and had a serious expression, like someone who belonged to another time. Visitors to the Grove often describe a heavy feeling in the air, especially near the back rooms and the garden. Some say they hear soft footsteps following them down the hallway, though the floorboards stay still. Others feel sudden bursts of cold air, or the brush of unseen fingers against their skin. One guest claimed to have seen a woman sitting by the window, her face calm, but her eyes full of sadness. When he blinked, she was gone, leaving only the faint scent of lavender behind. The current owners have embraced the home's reputation for being haunted. They host tours for those brave enough to step inside after dark. During these tours, guests often experience unexplained occurrences. Flashlights flicker. Phones lose battery power for no reason. Some hear whispers calling their names from empty rooms. One visitor fainted after feeling a sharp pain in his shoulder, only to discover 3 faint scratches there afterward. Paranormal investigators have visited the Grove many times. Recordings captured voices whispering words like, "Help me," and "Stay here." Cameras picked up orbs of light floating through rooms, and in some cases, the faint outline of a person standing in the doorway. One investigator claimed he saw a man walking through the garden in broad daylight, only for the figure to disappear into thin air. Local legends say that the grove was built on top of old burial grounds, and that the restless spirits of the past still wander beneath the soil. Others believe that some of the early tragedies that took place there, including violent deaths and mysterious disappearances, left behind a spiritual stain that can never be erased. The garden itself is said to be one of the most active areas. Visitors often hear the sound of footsteps in the grass, as if someone is walking just behind them. Shadows move between the trees, and sometimes a woman's soft singing drifts through the air, even when the garden is empty. There is also the spirit of a young girl who appears near the front door, her laughter echoing faintly before fading into silence. Many who visit the grove describe feeling as if they are being watched from the upstairs windows. Some even see faces looking out when the building is locked and no one is inside. Photographs taken from the street have shown faint silhouettes peering through the glass, shapes of men and women dressed in clothing from another century. The house seems to carry its history like a wound that never heals. During the day, it looks peaceful and still. Sunlight dances across its walls, and the scent of flowers drifts from the garden. But at night, when the wind picks up and the moonlight falls across the porch, the spirits of the grove seem to awaken. Doors creak open. Shadows stretch long across the floor. The laughter of invisible children echoes faintly in the distance. Those who have spent the night say it is impossible to sleep. The air grows colder by the hour. Whispers come from the corners of the room. Sometimes, the faint sound of a piano plays, though there is no piano in the house anymore. The grove stands as both a piece of Southern history and a reminder that the past never truly fades. Every ghost that lingers there has a story, and every creak of the floorboards seems to tell part of it. For some, it is a place of fascination, a living museum of the supernatural. For others, it is a house best left alone. Even today, locals lower their voices when they speak of it. They say the spirits there are restless, watching from the windows, waiting for someone to listen to their stories. The grove may look like a house, but those who have been inside know the truth. It is something else entirely. It is a doorway between life and death, where time stands still, and where the living and the dead walk side by side. Number 10. Jesse Patterson Farmhouse, Athens, Ohio. Hidden deep in the rolling green hills of Athens County, where the fog settles low and the trees seem to whisper in the wind, stands the Jesse Patterson Farmhouse. To the untrained eye, it looks like an ordinary piece of forgotten history, an old wooden structure with peeling paint, rusted hinges, and fields that stretch endlessly around it. But to the locals, it is something else entirely. They call it cursed, a place where time stands still and the line between the living and the dead has long since faded away. The house was built in the mid-1800s by Jesse Patterson, a hard-working farmer known throughout the area for his dedication to his land and family. Life in rural Ohio was tough, but the Pattersons built something beautiful here, a home filled with laughter, light, and the warmth of family. But all that changed one bitter winter night. According to old records and whispered stories passed through generations, sickness struck the Patterson family. It started with one child, then another, until the home was filled with the sound of coughing and fevered cries. Despite desperate efforts to find help, the family was isolated by snow and sickness. One by one, they faded, and by the time spring came, the once lively farmhouse was silent. When neighbors finally entered, they found signs of panic, overturned chairs, broken dishes, and a family portrait lying shattered on the floor. Some say the look on Jesse Patterson's face, frozen in death, told of something more than illness, something that had come to claim not just their lives, but their peace. Since that day, the farmhouse has never truly rested. Those who venture near it speak of lights glowing from the windows long after midnight, though no one has lived there for decades. Others tell of hearing a child's laughter echoing through the halls, soft at first, then turning into cries that seem to come from the walls themselves. Farmhands who once worked the surrounding fields refused to stay after dark. They claimed that doors would slam without warning, that cold winds would sweep through closed rooms, and that footsteps followed them wherever they went. One man swore he saw a woman in a long white dress standing in the upstairs window, her hand pressed against the glass, her face pale and hollow. When he called out, she turned away and vanished into the dark. In the 1970s, a team of university students from Ohio University decided to investigate the farmhouse after hearing the local legends. Armed with cameras, recorders, and bravado, they entered the decaying home. Within minutes, their equipment began to fail. Batteries drained instantly, and a piercing static filled their microphones. On one recording, a soft voice can be heard whispering, "Leave us be." The group left before dawn, shaken, pale, and unwilling to ever return. Paranormal investigators who have since visited the site describe it as heavy with energy, a place that feels alive even when it stands perfectly still. Cold spots appear and vanish in seconds. Shadowy shapes drift across rooms. Some investigators claim they felt unseen hands brush their shoulders or heard footsteps pacing the hall above them, even though no one else was inside. A few have even said they saw the figure of Jesse Patterson himself, standing by the old fireplace with a sorrowful look, staring into the ashes that have long gone cold. Neighbors still avoid the farmhouse after sunset. They say they've seen lantern lights flicker near the barn, even though there's no electricity. Drivers on the nearby road have reported seeing a young girl standing near the gate, her dress glowing faintly in the moonlight. When they stop to check, she disappears into thin air, leaving behind only the faint scent of wood smoke and cold earth. The farmhouse has been abandoned for decades, but its story has never faded. Some say the spirits that remain there are simply lost, bound to the only home they ever knew. Others believe something darker holds them captive, feeding on grief and fear, twisting memories into endless torment. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: those who enter the Jesse Patterson farmhouse never forget it. They leave with shaking hands, cold skin, and the feeling that something unseen is watching them still. It stands to this day, weathered and silent, waiting in the Ohio hills. The doors creak when the wind blows, and the floorboards groan as though someone still walks those halls. Whether it's the spirits of the Patterson family or something far older that has claimed the house, no one knows. But those who dare to go near swear they can hear a voice carried on the night breeze, a whisper from the farmhouse that says, "We are still here." Number 11. Franklin Castle, Cleveland, Ohio. In the heart of Cleveland's old Ohio City neighborhood, where elegant Victorian homes line the quiet streets and the past seems to cling to every brick and lamppost, stands a mansion so steeped in darkness that locals speak its name in hushed tones: Franklin Castle. At first glance, it is breathtaking, tall, grand, and beautifully crafted, with towers that rise like watchful eyes above the neighborhood. But those who know its story say that beauty is only a mask. Behind those stone walls lies a legacy of grief, madness, and restless spirits that refuse to leave. The house was built in the late 1800s by a wealthy German immigrant named Hannes Tiedemann. He was a successful banker and businessman who wanted a home that reflected his family's stature. With its twisting staircases, elaborate woodwork, and secret passageways, Franklin Castle was a marvel of design. Yet from the very beginning, there was something strange about it. It is said that misfortune followed the Tiedemann family from the day they moved in. Within just a few years, 4 of Hannes's children died under mysterious circumstances. Some were said to have succumbed to illness, others to accidents that no one could quite explain. Then, his mother passed away in the house as well. Neighbors began to whisper that the grand home was cursed, that something inside it was claiming the lives of everyone who entered. When tragedy struck again, with the death of Hannes's wife, Louise, the rumors deepened. People began to suspect that her death was not natural, that she might have been driven to despair or worse. In grief, Hannes began to change. He became reclusive, unpredictable, and obsessed with remodeling the house. He ordered the construction of secret rooms, hidden tunnels, and narrow staircases that led nowhere. Some believed he was building them to hide something or someone. One tale speaks of a hidden chamber behind a sliding panel in the ballroom, where strange noises can still be heard late at night. Another tells of the attic, where the cries of a baby echo through the rafters, though no child has lived there in decades. People say that the cold wind that moves through the halls is not from broken windows or open doors, but from spirits passing unseen. Over the years, the mansion changed owners many times. None stayed long. Some claimed to hear footsteps pacing endlessly across the upper floors when the house was empty. Others spoke of phantom figures appearing at the top of the staircase, a woman in black, a man in old-fashioned clothes, or a shadowy presence that disappears when you blink. In one story, a group of guests saw a young girl standing by the window, her face pale and sad. She lifted her hand as if asking for help, and then she was gone. During the mid-20th century, the house became the center of attention for paranormal researchers. Strange photographs emerged, showing transparent faces, glowing mists, and shapes that resembled figures standing in the corners of empty rooms. Several investigators reported hearing German voices whispering in the dark, calling out names that matched those of the Tiedemann family.